We all loved Harry Potter growing up, and the books are just magical for everyone who cares to read. But did you know the story behind the author? Just before she became the world's top-earning author, J.K. Rowling struggled as a single mom. At one point, she had to skip meals so that her daughter wouldn't sleep hungry. And even when the money started coming in, Rowling remained modest in her spending. She's currently a billionaire and even gives to charity, but very few people know her in person. Today, Rowling is a practical example of a rich person living a modest life. Do you know what sets Rowling and other wealthy people apart? Robert Kiyosaki explains, "Rich people buy luxuries last, while poor people buy them first." According to the finance author and motivational speaker, the rich acquires assets while the poor have only expenses. That brings us to this all-important question. What are these expenses that the poor have that the rich avoid? Well, I'll share with you 10 expenses all rich people avoid. But before that, if you are new here, consider subscribing to this channel to continue receiving great videos like this. Also check in the description below some excellent resources that will change your life from good to the life you deserve. Now, let's get into it. TV and video game subscriptions. The first expense that the rich avoid is unnecessary entertainment subscriptions. According to a study by Nielsen, households with an annual income less than $25,000 spend more money on media entertainment than households with a yearly income more than $75,000. So, poor people consume more TV and video games than rich people. While the poor spend hours playing video games and catching up with the latest gossip news on TV, the rich people are out there networking or somewhere indoors reading. No wonder American author Zig Ziglar affirms rich people have small TVs and big libraries, and poor people have small libraries and big TVs. Remember, TV and video game subscriptions cost a lot of money, which you probably don't have if you are in the $25,000 annual income bracket. So instead of spending your money on expensive entertainment, invest in books. Bill Gates reads about 50 books a year, while Mark Cuban reads 3 hours daily. Other notable billionaire readers are Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, and Oprah Winfrey. So if these guys can read dedicatedly with all their millions, how about you? Takeaway: cut on expensive entertainment subscriptions and invest the money and time in reading good books. Costly education. The second expense that the wealthy avoid is costly education. How ironic. You probably know of Ralph Lauren, the brains behind the famous Ralph Lauren clothing line. Well, Mr. Lauren dropped out of school because he couldn't afford to pursue his love, fashion. Interestingly, he decided selling ties before founding the Ralph Lauren Corporation, a multi-million-dollar business empire. The last time I checked, Mr. Lauren was worth more than $5 billion. So mark you, he's not the only school dropout billionaire. Oracle founder Larry Ellison, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, and Apple co-founder Steve Jobs all dropped out of college at some point before returning to collect their diplomas. So what am I driving at? Don't get me wrong, I'm not recommending that you shouldn't pursue education. After all, investment in education pays the best dividend, according to Benjamin Franklin. What I'm saying is that it doesn't have to be expensive. Most people accumulate millions in college loans, debt that they spend half of their lives paying. Does that make sense? How about you invest in self-education more? According to Jim Rohn, formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. Takeaway: which between a living and a fortune do you want more? If it's the latter, then invest in self-education. Again, read good books, listen to the right advice, and you will have some inspiration. Overpriced home. The third costly expense that the rich stay away from is expensive housing. Although it's everyone's dream to own a home, many people rush into putting all their savings there. Unless it's a rental property, a home is a liability and there are maintenance, taxes, and other bills. So buying an overpriced big house is never wise. Rich people don't do that. A man like Warren Buffett lives in a house he bought for $31,800 years ago. Do you know why? That is because he understands that house is a considerable expense, and the bigger it is, the costlier it is to maintain it. The CEO of Berkshire Hathaway advises only buy something that you'd be perfectly happy to hold if the market shuts down. So before you can commit all your savings to a house, ask yourself if you can afford to maintain it. Also look for a good deal. Don't overpay for a house as it might come to bite you. Takeaway: buy a house that you can afford to pay for and maintain. Expensive flights. The rich also avoid costly flights. You probably expect the rich to fly business class wherever they go on a trip, right? Well, while some do, some don't. IKEA founder Ingvar Kamprad is one of those who don't. Instead, he is known to fly in economy class and sometimes checking in cheaper hotels. According to Kamprad, flying in business class is only an unnecessary expense. Meanwhile, people with moderate income often overpay to have business class tickets. That is why business class flights continue to be expensive. Once we realize that we don't have to fly business class to be comfortable, business class flights will start to become more affordable. After all, the luxury of a business class flight is only short-lived. Reality checks in when you get off the plane. Takeaway: if it's economy class that you can afford, then pay for it. Don't strain yourself financially just for the temporary comfort of business class flights. Flashy cars. Contrary to most assumptions, wealthy people don't drive flashy cars. Instead, they would rather put their money into something else or give to charity. For example, Jeff Bezos might be the rich man globally, but until 2013, the Amazon CEO was seen driving his old 1996 Honda Accord, a modest car by his standard. Mark Zuckerberg is another modest billionaire. The Facebook founder is known to drive a Volkswagen hatchback and a Honda Hitch, all estimated to be costing under $30,000. Elon Musk also drives modestly by his standard. The Tesla CEO drives a Tesla Model S Performance, which costs around $90,000, despite being worth more than $152.2 billion, according to Investopedia. So these guys teach us one thing: you don't have to drive fancy cars to feel rich. Takeaway: flashy cars are only for the glory, but if you cannot afford them, get what you can afford. Luxurious jewelry. The sixth expense that the rich avoid is luxurious jewelry. Did you know that Bill Gates wears a $10 watch? Yes, the billionaire rocks a $10 watch even though he can afford an entire cabinet of Rolexes. Overall, rich people like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and others don't care much about flashy jewels like the poor do. They prefer to wear moderate gold jewelry when they go to events, not to arouse unnecessary attention. The average earners, in contrast, invest all their money in costly jewelry to make a statement. Others go as far as borrowing to make an appearance, and that only swamps them in debt. Takeaway: instead of borrowing or spending all your investment in luxurious jewelry, be modest and save up. Designer brands. The seventh expense that the rich avoid is designer brands. Even though the rich can afford the most luxurious clothes and shoes, they are never in a hurry to get them. Look at IKEA founder Ingvar Kamprad, for example. He confessed in Newsweek he only wears clothes that he gets from the flea market. Even though he can afford expensive clothing, he prefers to go cheap. The average income earners, in contrast, spend all their hard-earned money in the latest designer clothes and shoes to impress others. American financier Susie Orman warns, stop buying things you don't need to impress people you don't even like. The takeaway: while designer brands may be classier and fashionable, their glory is short-lived, and they leave you in a financial hole that you may find hard to get out of. Debt repayment. The eighth expense that rich people avoid is debt repayment. Do you know that every time you borrow money, you are robbing your future? That's according to personal finance guru Nathan W. Morris. The rich generally hate debt. They detest the idea of having continually paid for something they used a long time ago. They would rather pay for what they can afford than borrow. Do you know how long it takes to pay an average student loan? Well, it takes about 20 years on average. Other debts that enslave the ordinary person are auto loans and mortgages. Overall, you can live a much comfortable life if you avoid debts. And if you must borrow, have a repayment plan in mind, which could be a side job or a new business. Takeaway: stay away from debt and you'll be able to save and make meaningful financial steps. Expensive grooming. Let me now talk about something that ails our ladies most. So many women spend thousands of dollars on a new look. They want to look better, so they spend so much on elegant nails, plastic surgery, and even implants. Sadly, most do it to impress others, only to feel like they belong in a particular class. The rich don't do that. They don't spend their money on expensive grooming as they believe it is vanity. Takeaway: you can still look beautiful without having to spend much. So find ways to save on your grooming and still look your best. Social spending. Lastly, the last expense that the rich avoid is social spending. People with average earnings always want to impress others, so they are going out and eating at the best restaurants and then posting their experience online. Others spend so much on friends who they are afraid to turn down not to disappoint them. Others try to fit in a class that's not theirs just to be accepted. Rich people don't do that. They don't care about what people say. It's their money, so they are calculative in their spending. Ironically, they are the first to ask for a change at the restaurant when the poor gives unnecessary tips, so they embrace modest living more than the average class. I like what Henry David Thoreau says about living modestly. He says that man is richest whose pleasures are cheapest. Takeaway: learn to have fewer wants, as they'll save you from accumulating unwanted debts and struggling financially. You now have 10 expenses that you should avoid like a plague if you want to be rich or remain rich if you are already there. Doing so will give you a wealthy man's mindset, and that's key in attaining financial reliance and building wealth. Here is another excellent video for you: 10 assets that are making people rich. Until next time, take care.